Morning.
Morning.
Happy Sabbath. And I thought I was the nervous one. Happy Sabbath. There you go. That's much better. I feel a whole lot better now. This is another part of what time it is. And as you can look around, do you see things closing down? Is things coming to an end, maybe? Well, today is about money, or part of it's about money. I realized last night that this is just way too long. I got to cut it back. I got to stop it, or else we're going to be here for a long time. So we're going to make two parts out of this. Now, we need money to survive. If somebody says money is the root of all evil and don't want their money, we can put a plate back there on the way out. Y'all can drop it in a plate, and Keith would be glad to take it, right, Keith? So I don't want to forget this part, but the economy, and we're going to talk about money, and you'll see why, but the economy is turning, and it's always turning and turning and turning. When it slows down, it becomes a problem. If it stops, it's a severe problem because they do not have a reverse gear. So another way to look at this for the American economy is, let's picture a gigantic swimming pool. And the inflation has flooded this pool. It's overflowing. Okay, there's 34 trillion gallons of water in this pool, and it just can't hold it, and it's overflowing. Well, the good part about the American economy has a drain in it. Now, something is sucking off the bottom of it. And what is that? That is other countries. They use the American dollar, and they depend on that American dollar. So their swimming pools are filling too. The problem is they don't have a drain. Now, this could lead to a catastrophic failure because if one country goes down, it could eat back to our part. And we're going to look at that. We won't get there today fully, but we'll get into it in just a little bit. First, I want to thank the Post for coming out today and having special music. It seems like they come with me every time that I'm up here preaching. They didn't come last time, and I want to say a special thank you to Ruth. Now, those that don't know Ruth was the piano player. Well, Ruth is blind. Now, I can't play the piano, and I can sing, or see, not sing. You don't want me singing. Nobody would be here. But she's blind, and something that struck me last time she was here playing as I was walking up to her. Now, we was in church, so there's stuff going on in here. And she turns and looks at me. And I sat down, I said, "You heard me, or how'd you know I was coming?" She said, "I heard you." And that's impressive because I can't hear now, especially at home when my wife's talking. Oh, I'll take that back, she's here. But I want to welcome my family for coming too, and all those people that are on the internet. I'm going to bring back God versus creation. I took that out last time, and I also took out the breaking news, and I don't think people quite liked my sermon last time. It's a little political, but politics are going to have a big impact on the end of time. Not a big one, probably a huge one. So keep that in mind. But today we're going to do a God versus creation. And it might not be, let's back up Mr. Fuzz before I want to start. It might not be as cool as the hummingbird. The hummingbird was really cool. But I believe this could be cooler. So for Ruth, we have an octopus, and it's a very beautiful octopus. It's crawling around on some coral, and it's matching the color of the coral. Now, some people might say, "Oh, that octopus, that's the color." That is not true, and this is God's creation versus evolution. Now the octopus, if I can get my slides to work, how many hearts does the octopus have? Anybody? How many hearts? The octopus has 3. He has 3 hearts. The octopus's large heart, the systemic heart, is located in the middle of the octopus's body. It pumps oxygenated blood around the body, but not to the gills. It is the largest and most muscular of the 3 hearts. Now the other heart, it can often be called the gill hearts because it pumps blood to the gills. How many arms does an octopus have? If you said 7, you was incorrect. It does have 8. Now, what does the octopus do with its arms? Arms and suckers make up most of an octopus's squishy body and are extremely important body parts. Arms and their suckers are used for movement, pushing, pulling, grasping, camouflage, mimicry, fighting, mating, capturing its prey, and tasting. Now, something about the octopus, it's not in here, but it has how many brains? Anybody have a guess? How many brains does an octopus have? How many? 8 brains? No. It's a good guess. Very good guess. I'd have never guessed that. I'd have said 1. The octopus has 9 brains. Each one of its arms, it's not legs, it's arms, has a brain. And they have cut an octopus's arm off before, and an hour later they put food up there and it grabs the food and tries to bring it to the mouth. So it has its own brain in each arm. My computer's running slow. I think I need a new one. What is an octopus ink? The octopus ink does not just hide the animal. The ink also physically harms its enemies. It contains a compound called tyrosinase, which in humans helps control the production of the natural pigment. And this is in the eye. So something about this ink. If the octopus inks and he gets trapped in his own ink, it can kill him because it gets in his breathing and he cannot breathe and he'll die. So here is an octopus and a diver is trying to provoke it to ink, and it's going through the water and it starts inking. Notice it's got an enormous amount of ink as he goes through the water. Now he's hard to see. You see him? Oh, there he is. He's way down there on the bottom. He's still inking out ink. And there's another puff of ink. Now he's probably about out now because he's put out bigger than he is. Here's another octopus and he's sitting on the coral. Now he's grabbing this coral and did you see him just change colors? Instantly his body changes colors. Notice he does not use his arms to swim with. He'll grab the rock and he tries to blend in to the rock. And he does that pretty well because if you just be swimming by and he was completely still, you'd probably never see him. But this guy's like, man, leave me alone. And again, he's trying to blend into the rock. Now he's going to give up and he's going to move on. And notice again, when he does move, he does not use his arms. His gills are like jets. If you see that, he does not use his arms for swimming. Now he's going to swim up to this coral, and he's going to try and mimic the coral. Now, he does a pretty good job there. Notice how he changed colors just like that. Now he's going to say, wait a minute, you guys, I am going to deceive you. Look there. Let me change colors again. Now you don't even see me hardly. And he can be still. So, I didn't realize it till last night, but my video cut short, but I can tell you about this part. Now they took a crab and they placed the crab in a jar with a lid in it, a clear jar, put the crab in the bottom of the tank, and introduced it to an octopus that had never seen this jar. They're curious how smart these creatures are. Now the octopus probably looks at the crab and feels around on the jar, and he's like, how did you get in there? So he starts feeling around, and he comes to the top of the jar, and he gets on top of the jar, and then a minute later you see the lid pop and the lid falls off, and in the octopus goes, or his arms, he reaches down there. Now the crab never did, I would say he never seen it coming, but it was a clear jar. So there's different, they took another octopus. Now this is just to show how smart this creature is. They caught an octopus out in the wild. They took and they put him in a glass jar, or a glass cage. There's a hole in the glass cage. The only part of an octopus that is bone is between his eyes. The rest of him is just squishy. So they put him in this big cage, or glass cage, and there's a hole in it. Well, the octopus, he felt around, he found the hole. He couldn't see the hole, but he finds the hole and he sticks his arm out. Well, then a minute later, his other arm wiggles out. And then another arm wiggles out. And before you know it, the whole octopus, and it took a little while to do this, it took about an hour, the whole octopus come through that hole and swam away. They caught another octopus, had never seen that cage before. They stuck him in the cage, and they put a smaller hole in the cage. The octopus sticks his arm out the hole, and he stops. Now, he realized that he could not fit through that. So he pulls his arm back in and just sits in the cage. He realizes there is no escape. Now we go to God versus evolution. They say, or I read, that the octopus is so intelligent and such an incredible creature that it was impossible for this to come from evolution. They said the aliens must have dropped him off. Oh, speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all those does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? Now it's time for our breaking news. Now remember, I am just the messenger. Don't throw nothing at me. Now, if you want to hear this again, just tell me, and I'll play it again. This made my blood boil, and it should you too. I watched it so many times because I was so interested in what he was saying that I got to laughing at him. So let's listen to the breaking news.
By the Protestant heresy.
Let's back that up. Let's try again.
Sorry.
You're okay.
The Catholic Church, the human dimension, has been overrun by the Protestant heresy. When we talk about the church and nice, that's actually what we're talking about. That large group of Catholics who have joined themselves to the lie that is Protestantism. Protestantism is a lie because it is a heresy. We've been hitting this theme all week. And heresies, like schisms, lead to hell for the unrepentant. Here's the rub. Every single last one of those beliefs they get from Catholicism, period. They didn't come up with those on their own. They belong to us. We're happy to share them. Just take them all. When Martin Luther and his heretical cohort were walking out of the church, they took a few things with them, those beliefs among them. And then over the centuries, Luther's followers have taken those Catholic treasures and distorted them almost beyond recognition. In the area of theology, for example, Protestants don't have a clue about sacred scripture, although they all dance around like they do. They interpret it for themselves and they fill in the blanks as they go along, essentially making it up. What it creates is an environment where instead of being instructed by Scripture, you instruct it. Protestants impose their personal beliefs on the texts, and they twist them to mean whatever they like the most. They're not a church. They're normally nothing more than a nonprofit organization that meets once or twice a week and occasionally gets something correct in Scripture, but most of the time makes a shipwreck of the sacred texts because they have denied the authority of the Catholic Church, who gave the world the Bible. It's our book. You don't take it and then get to tell us what it means. And then, having denied the authority of the church to correctly interpret it, even though, again, the church produced it, then they claim a right which they do not possess, the ability to interpret Scripture. It denies the efficacy of the sacraments, most especially the real presence of Christ, body, blood, soul, divinity in the Eucharist. It twists and distorts sacred Scripture in the egotistical air of telling congregations what they want to hear. We're not essentially all the same, meaning in essence. They deny the church, and he who denies the church denies Christ himself. Not a single book of the Bible, for example, itself claims to be inspired. Not one. Yet Protestants go on and on about the Bible being inspired. Well, since the Bible itself doesn't even claim that, then why do they believe it?
Keith, do we have a tax ID number? Are we nonprofit? Through the conference. I was just checking to see if anything he said was true. Interesting, right? He wasn't just talking to us. He was talking to everybody. Everybody. So I have something to give him back. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction and righteousness. Let's pour a little salt in his wound. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Arrayed in what color? Purple, scarlet. Here's another picture with their colors, purple and scarlet. Precious stones, purple and scarlet. Knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lust, and saying, Where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. But they mocked the messenger of God and despised his words and misused his prophets until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, till there was no remedy. Now, for those of you that was not here last time, we're going to do a recap. I know the post wasn't here. We're going to recap real quick on what the service was about.
Crackpots, insurrectionists, and weekend terrorists are laying the groundwork to turn our government into a Trumpist nightmare if the former president somehow manages to get back into the White House in 2024. The AP reports on the plan laid out by a Project 2025, a government in waiting for Trump's return. Quote, the idea is to have the civic infrastructure in place on day one to commandeer, reshape, and do away with what Republicans deride as the deep state. firing as many as 50,000 federal workers. The goal is to oust employees they believe are standing in the way of the president's agenda and replacing them with like-minded individuals. That should sound familiar since it's directly linked to Donald Trump's authoritarian plans overall. The New York Times reported in July that Trump and his associates have a broader goal: to alter the balance of power by increasing the president's authority over every part of the federal government that now operates by either law or tradition, with any measure of independence from political interference by the White House.
On day number 1.
I said, no, other than day 1.
2025. It's a call for you to come work here. Well, things aren't going to change unless you commit to serving our country.
This time, we have a secret weapon. This time, we have Project 2025. We can be ready to hit the ground running on day 1.
Make sure that we, as conservatives, are prepared to hit the ground running January 20th, 2025.
Except for day 1.
And remember the climate clock that Joy introduced us to? Counting down to 0 to avoid famine, drought, floods, displacement, conflict, suffering, and disasters.
On day number 1.
That includes their plans to make pushing right-wing Christianity the federal government's job. It's all in there in the nearly 1,000-page playbook calling on the next president to maintain a, quote, biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family.
And here is the playbook, page number 589 of a 1,000-page document, Project 2025 Presidential Transition Project. Congress should encourage communal rest to be amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require the workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath. That day would default to Sunday, except for employees with sincere religious observance of a Sabbath, not the Sabbath. How many Sabbaths are there? Well, somebody could say, well, there's 52 of them. How many in a week? 1. What is the definition of the Sabbath? The 7th day. That's right, and it says a Sabbath. So you get to choose, and then it would transfer to the period instead of your choosing, like Friday night sundown to Saturday sundown. But if you don't check the box, that day will default to Sunday. Now let's listen to this guy that wrote this chapter that is in this playbook. And remember, all these things are what time is it? What is coming? Back when I was a child, I heard all this stuff, and I heard it, and I heard it, and I heard it for years and years and years. I was shocked when I seen this, floored, but listen.
But there are implications for social conservative values across many issues. One of the interesting proposals that you've laid out in Project 2025 handbook from Heritage is stuff around the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. What are some of the ideas that you have there?
Yes. So this is, it sounds controversial. Mm-hmm. In many respects, it is a return to something that basically always everyone ever had. Mm-hmm. And it's specifically the idea of encouraging Sabbath rest through discouraging commerce on the Sabbath. The proposal that's in our book is amending the basic federal overtime law, Fair Labor Standards Act, to require that overtime be paid for all work done on the Sabbath.
Interesting.
Yes. So I don't think I don't think Congress has the authority to mandate like a national closing on the Sabbath. That was always a state decision to do that. But let me add, it was always a state decision to do that.
They did it.
and yeah, I'm not saying this practice was uniform, homogenous, whatever, but very, very widely spread, and only recently, in the last few decades, have most states moved away from this. So this is, I think this is about as far as the federal government could properly go in this space, but it would be an encouragement and inducement to rest, but really to kind of coordinate commercial activity for the other 6 days of the week, which is as long as we've had Sabbatarian civilization, beginning in Israel and continuing into Christendom. This is something that's been increasingly a part of the rhythm of civic life. Most importantly, for people to have space to worship and honor God, and secondly, to have times of communal rest with their families and with their communities.
Interesting. When I was a kid growing up, I heard the Sabbath is going to come into a big play. Never heard anything about it until about 2020, and things have just set fire to the world. And it is changing at a rapid pace. Now that's a recap from what time is it? But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, there were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. So we can look backwards and we can look at Noah, and the Bible tells us to do this. You can look back, it says, so as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of God. We can compare these things. The wicked in his proud countenance does not seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. Now there's a man standing in the passenger side of a police car. The windshield is all broke out. There's 2 men on top, and there's another one in the driver's side looking for a get-out-of-jail card free. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent, the thoughts of his heart, was only evil continually. Now I tried to find an evil picture. This was the most evil picture I could find. There is thousands of shoes in that picture, and they come from the Holocaust Museum, from the Jews that was put in the gas chambers. How much more evil can that be? And that happened right before our time. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now Noah spake for how long? 120 years. I went in yesterday and I sat down at my tire shop, and I was trying to get a price on some tires. And he said, hey, well, we always talk about the economy when I'm there. He said, hey, what do you think about the economy? I said, man, it's going to collapse. And he just laughed. He said, you said that 2 years ago when I first opened up. How long did Noah preach? 120 years. Remember, this is about preparing or getting prepared. So we know Noah preached for 120 years. Now, if we go back and we use the 1844, we know, and this service is not about that. If you want to study that, you can go back and look at the 2,300 days of prophecy, and the Bible tells you that the 1844, now it does not come out and say 1844, does it? But if you look into it, it represents 1844. They stood out in a field and they thought Jesus was coming in 1844, called the Great Disappointment. He just didn't understand. That has been 180 years ago since that took place. And Noah preached for how long? We've had a few more years, so it's not the point that it was 120 years, it was a time frame. The point is, the preaching is going on, by which the word that then existed perished, being the flood with the waters, but the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment and the perdition of ungodly men. So the earth was destroyed by water, and now we know that it's going to be consumed by fire after, or when the judgment takes place. So we're in that period before judgment, and I believe you are standing right there at the door. I am the door. By me, if any man enters in, he shall be saved. Now, when the ark was there, you had the choice. You could go in or not. And we know that only 8 people went in. I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it, for thou hast little strength. And we're looking back, we're comparing Noah's days, we're looking ahead to our days. Now there was an ark that they went in. Jesus is the ark this time. And he has the door. You are at the door. And no man can shut it. So nobody can choose your destiny, right? Who chooses it? You do. He wants you to enter, but you don't. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to. That's up to you. But he stands there at the door, and nobody can shut that door. And the Lord shut him in. So you can look back and you can see that door shut. Now that must have been an amazing sight, because Noah built this ark. It took 120 years. Here he is building this ark and probably scratching his head thinking, how am I going to shut that door? The point is, the door could not be shut by man. It was huge. There was no way to shut it. But God shut him in and sealed that door. You think about this. That door had to be watertight. It had to have been squished in there. And it had to have been done by God. And it says, I shut him in. For many, I say unto you, will seek to enter in, and shall not be able, when once the master of the house has risen up and has shut the door, and ye begin to stand without, and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open unto us. And he shall answer and say unto you, I know you not whence ye are. Then shall you begin to say, we have eaten and drunk in thy presence, and thou hast taught in our streets. But he shall say, I tell you, I know you not whence ye are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity. Now it tells right there in the end why you can't come in. And iniquity means lawlessness, right? 10 Commandments, lawlessness. So this is not talking about people that don't believe in God, is it? It is plainly saying, we was there, we preached for you, we was in the streets with you, we did this for you. We done all this for you, but yet you shut us out. There is 2 paths. One leads to God's door, and one leads the other way. Can we be deceived in thinking that we just went into God's door? And obviously it says you can, because they're there complaining, wait, let us in. And he says no. We're looking at a picture of the ark. There's birds flying around in the air. They're lining up. They're getting ready to go in the ark. There's animals coming up from all different kinds, and they're all going right up into that ark. Noah is standing there preaching, and the people are laughing and making fun of him. Could they have pride, Joy? Oh, Joy talked about pride. So pride could have kept them out. Can you imagine standing at the door or out there and seeing these animals coming from everywhere, and coming up, walking up and entering that ark? What had to be on people's minds? He's preached for 120 years. Here comes the flood. Here comes the flood. They've never seen it rain before. There was a mist that come up out of the water and watered the earth, the Bible says. But here they are, the animals are coming in. This should have been a dead giveaway that something is going to happen, because I'm sure they killed and ate animals back then. They had to have been scared of man, just like they are when you go deer hunting. Does the deer walk out and say, hey, shoot me? No, it runs when it sees you. It's scared of you. And here they are walking up, probably not scared of anybody, on a mission to enter that ark. Why did they not enter the ark? Maybe pride kept them out. I'm sure people had to think, I need to get on that boat. I need to get on that boat. But everybody's out there making fun of him, and they turn and they walk away with the other people. Now, something to think about real quick. These people that packed their stuff up and walked away because the door shut, we're walking away. There's nothing to see here no more. I'm sure they probably stayed outside for a little bit. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You know, and day one come and nothing happened. Day two come and nothing happened. Not only that, what about Noah inside? Noah is in the ark. The door is shut. We can look at the end of time. The door is shut. Noah is probably sitting there thinking, what have I done? Have I done the right thing? Is God with me? But on day number 8, it's a different story, isn't it? But back before the door shuts, as these people are walking away and they gather their stuff, it's probably a big spectacle, this huge boat. I've never seen the boat, the ark up in Ohio. I want to go. But you got this big boat, and there had to have been a lot of people sitting there watching all this. And they pack their stuff and they walk away. Now, does God run out of the ark and grab them and say, oh, no, you're not? Drag them back in and throw them inside and shut the door? He does not. They walked away, and he let them walk away because that was their decision. It was their choice. Today, we're bringing into money. Now, we can look at the past, and we see what happens. There's another warning in the Bible, and it says, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his names. Can you imagine going to the store, and you got all your groceries because you need to eat, right? You got to eat. Tell me somebody that don't go and buy groceries. Anybody? You got to eat. It takes money, right? You go and you don't go through lines. Say, hey, I'll see you next week. Oh, no. No, they'll stop you, wouldn't they? Sticking your card in, and it says declined. Let me try another one. Declined. Now, some people say, oh, this is not going to happen. When I talk to people and we kind of have this conversation, you know what they say? Most of them, it's not going to happen in our lifetime. That's not going to happen in our lifetime. Noah preached for 120 years. Now, back then, they didn't measure you by the year because you lived for centuries. This could happen in a year. It could happen Monday. We could have a catastrophic failure and them implement something. And we'll get into that something. Keith watched that something, and it was shocking when you sit down and you think about this. but it says no man may buy or sell. You're out of clothes. You need new clothes. Think about that. You can't go buy them. Oh, well, I've got a stack of cash at home. Like Mike, he's got just a stacks of cash at home. He says, wait a minute. Hold the groceries. I'll be right back. He runs home and he gets a wheelbarrow load of cash, takes it back, and I said, what are you doing? Oh, I've got all this cash. No, we don't take that no more. That's worthless. What would you do? Worthless money? What makes $100 so valuable? Huh? $100 is so valuable because everybody wants it. If you didn't want it, it wouldn't be valuable, would it? If they take that away and they come out Monday and they say, hey, cash is useless, you can throw it in the garbage. Well, you run down to the bank, hey, I got money. And they, no, sorry, we don't go by your rules. We don't go by your rules. I want you to look at something real quick from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then we'll move on.
One of the topics that many Seventh-day Adventists want to know is just where are we with respect to the end of time? There's an economic framework that's been most helpful for me to visualize the relationship between finance and the things to come in the future. A theory called the Kondratiev wave. In 1920, a Russian economist named Nikolai Kondratiev observed that the global economy ran in cycles of about 50 to 70 years. There was a growth phase, which is called spring and summer, and then there was a plateauing of the global economy, autumn, followed by economic winter. Now, economic winters were characterized by stock market crashes, debt crisis, banking crisis, often a global depression, and followed by wars and regime changes. As we look at these Kondratiev waves over the past 200 years and compare that against prophetic events, very interesting patterns appear. Perhaps one of the most prominent things that occurred was in the year 1844, the end of one of these economic winters. William Miller had been preaching about the second coming of Christ to take place in 1844, and this coincided with that economic winter. Miller's success in preaching about the second coming of Christ may have been helped by the economic conditions of the time. People are more receptive to spiritual matters, to turn to God and to seek salvation when the conditions around them are very difficult. So this end of this economic wave came with the fulfilling of the 2,300-day prophecy. Now, the previous wave ended in the year 1789. This was the start of the French Revolution. And as the revolution progressed, it resulted in the arrest and the exile of the Pope in 1798. This was the end of the 1260-day prophecy. And again, there's this close tie between prophecy and the Kondratiev wave. Now, the third cycle ended in the year 1896. This was shortly after the Seventh-day Adventist Church had its 1888 experience. Ellen White wrote that in 1888 the loud cry was starting and that the latter rain was being poured out again. Unfortunately, the church and in particular its leaders were not ready for that outpouring of the Spirit, and we didn't see the ultimate fulfilling of the prophecy, which is the second coming of Christ. The next cycle that ended in 1945 was a very catastrophic cycle which had 2 world wars, an era which made it very difficult for the gospel work to be finished due to wars and the closed borders. Ellen White had lamented in the year 1903 about what might have been if we had been ready to receive the Holy Spirit. Perhaps it was a cycle that offered no opportunity to finish the work. So we look at the current cycle that we're in today. We're again in economic winter. It started in the year 2000 as the tech bubble burst and the stock market crashed. Since then, governments and central banks have taken extraordinary measures to try and fix the world economy, but their efforts have really only resulted in making things worse. But the message I want to give to people today is not so much that we're in an economic winter, but rather that this economic winter perhaps is harvest time for the church, an opportunity to finish the work that God has given us, a time when people are more receptive to the gospel message and are ready to turn to God and seek salvation.
I do not believe that you're going to go back up again. Now, let me say this, the stock market, I believe Thursday the Dow Jones hit an all-time high. I'm going to show you it can be taken away in the blink of an eye in just a minute. But first, money. Everybody needs money, right? I worry about money. Should we worry about money? I do. I worry about if something happens to me, how would my family go on? My wife's wanting to go back to school. And if something happened to me, that would be extremely hard to accomplish if something happened to me, because I'm part of the income. She's going to go back to school, and she's going to be a nurse practitioner, and then I can be like Derek and retire. One of these days, I'm going to go outside, and Derek is going to be sitting there beside my truck with a big stick hitting the side of his foot and saying, "Why do you always bring my name up?" I love you, brother. In the 1920s, now, we need to go back in time, and we need to look at the 1920s. Business is booming. Why is it booming? It's booming because of agriculture. I believe 1/3 of Americans worked in the agriculture during the 1920s. Why? Because they needed the food overseas. We was exporting huge numbers of food because World War I had just happened and people didn't have no food. They wasn't growing food. So back in the 1920s, farming was booming. They was making these big tractors. I'd love to have this tractor. It would be worth a lot of money now. But this guy, this old tractor on the field with a big plow, plowing up his garden. And then, of course, you had this new Ford, and I bet some people would just love, I bet Rodney would love to have that. I don't know if it's a 1928 Ford. I tried to look that up. That's what it gave me. That would be worth a lot of money right now, I'm sure. But business was booming. The farmers, they had to have tractors. They was buying more land. They was creating more crops. The workers had to get there. They needed cars. Ford was rolling out cars. Men could have new trucks. Here's an older truck, and this looks like the one off the Waltons. But you had this economy, and it's booming back there. And ladies, we don't want to leave you out. Electric washing machines really makes wash days a pleasure. Wow. Washing machines, and here's one of these washing machines. I've never looked one up. I have no idea how that thing works. Somebody even might have used one in here. I do not know. I'm assuming there was water in this tub, and you stuck your clothes in that. Did it wring the water out? Is that what that's for? All right, everybody's seen one except me. Y'all are older than me. I never. So anyway, back then, the economy was booming. They was creating all these things. The stock market, they're here on the floor, and all these guys running around in business suits with name tags, buying stock. We're going to look back at that on the second one because we do not have time to get into that. Here's our graph. For 21 years when the stock market opened, things are going okay. If you bought in on some of them dips, then you've made some money. But as you get to 1920, it takes off like a rocket ship. Now this economy is booming. Everybody is in the stock market. They're buying stock like crazy. Everybody was. You could even go to the bank and borrow money with the purpose of buying stock. They would let you do that. There was so much money being generated until 1929. Now, if you look, I don't have the rest of it in the picture. What I'm showing you is it can all come to an end, and that happened on one day. One day, it collapsed. Now, these little tickers, you see them going up and up and up. Some people could have made enormous amounts of money. This is just a general snapshot. Some things could have went up 200 and 300%. So on that day it collapsed. Well, the next thing to collapse is the banks. Now, some people say the stock market collapse had nothing to do with the banking. But the banking crisis come in. The first year, a couple thousand banks closed. The next year, a couple more. And eventually, they had to completely shut the banks down. Boom, done. You could not go get no money out. Now, this is after the collapse. These people are in line for soup. That's a pretty good-sized line. And these people had no money. Some people was taking ketchup and putting it in hot water to make soup. They had nothing. Here, the old houses or houses probably threw up out of nothing. They had nothing. They were probably moving back from the fields. Why did that collapse? Nobody was looking out the window to see that people overseas was, hey, we can grow our own. We don't need them no more. But nobody was watching that. These gentlemen are here with signs around their necks, wanted a decent job, a family man. Another guy, he's a family man. He's a war veteran, paying on a home and college trained. And he's also from Chicago. He's advertising, hey, I'm from here. Give me a job. I need a job. This man is sitting in the doorway. I don't know if he's asleep or he's just depressed because he's broke. He don't have nothing. It's been all taken away. Kids walking with signs. Why can't you give my dad a job? Now, this one here is of people standing in line at the bank. They're trying to get their money out, and it was all taken away. We're almost done. I've kept you all too long. I want to go over one more thing, and then we're going to finish. On April the 5th, 1933, Executive Order 6102 is signed. Under Executive Order of the President, issued April the 5th, 1933, all persons are required, it's not optional, it's required for you to turn in your gold bullions, and your gold certificates. You couldn't own it. It's taken away. And tell me they can't take the cash away. He signed an executive order, gold banned. You could not have it. Oh, no, you keep saying the economy's going good. You keep saying that. Noah kept saying, hey, you better get in the boat. Here is a picture illustrating this that shows, this is for Ruth, a man standing there and a sign above his head, the government, holding a gun. A citizen standing over in front of him with his arms raised, standing in front of his gold, and has a caption in the bottom. Believe it or not, from 1933 to 1974, it was illegal for an American citizen to keep gold. Failing to abide with $10,000 fine or 10 years in jail. You don't give it up, you get caught with it, you're going to jail. I didn't know this stuff. I had never seen that before. Tell me that they can't take away cash. You know, if things are left alone, you're going to go cashless. You already are cashless. I remember when COVID hit. I think it was Crystal. You couldn't use cash. It had a sign, no cash. They didn't want to touch your money. How easy is it for them to cut that cash off? Now, you're going to have people in this generation, probably the next generation, that's going to say, you're not taking away my cash. It's going to be an enormous problem because people are not going to want to give up their cash. You know, a way to combat that is the people we vote for, the people we put into office. They get run and say, hey, I'm not going to let them take away your money. I'm not going to do that. Something is going to happen to take away your cash, and that no man might buy or sell. We'll get into the second part in probably a couple months. But I want you to think about this and think about what I said. The swimming pool, it's overflowing right now. It's got 34 billion gallons of water in it. But there's a siphon. Hey, America's fine. It's going to siphon. It's going to lower back down. Inflation's going to go away. But remember, other people are sucking off the bottom. They need that cash in other countries. That's where there's a ginormous problem because the other countries are having trouble staying afloat. Japan is in serious trouble with their economy. If these economies start going down, it will affect the market. But it says no man might buy or sell.